Right then, let us dive straight into the heartbeat of Rangers, because these last few weeks have been nothing short of a roller coaster in Glasgow. Ever since Danny Rowe walked through the doors at Ibrox, the whole place feels different, almost as if someone cracked a window open in a room that had been gathering dust for far too long. The players look sharper, the crowd feels lighter, and matches that antes pareciam fardo agora carregam certo entusiasmo. The 3-0 victory over Dundee was more than just another scoreline, and it was a statement, the kind of performance that shows a team finally beginning to rediscover its own identity. 3 wins on the bounce in the Scottish Premiership do not happen by luck, especially not for a seed que vinha de semanas tão instáveis. So the response has been exactly what the supporters had been craving. Still, while the domestic form looks promising, the European stage continues to remind everyone of how much rebuilding lies ahead. 0 points in the Europa League is a harsh dose of reality, but it reflects the deep cracks that were already there before Rowe took charge. The defeats to Sturm Graz and Roma were not simply bad nights, they were symptoms of a squad that had lost structure, discipline, and a clear tactical purpose. Rowe is trying to fix the engine while the car is already speeding down the motorway, and naturally there are moments where the limitations of the group become painfully obvious. But even with that, you can sense the optimism creeping back into the stands, because the team at least looks like it has direction again, something that had been painfully absent under the previous regime. Part of this early progress comes from how quickly some players have stepped into key roles. Jack Butland continues to be a rock. James Tavernier appears revitalized. John Souttar is showing leadership at the back, and Nicholas Raskin has grown into a central figure again after a tumultuous spell earlier in the season. Roll's trust in Youssef Chermiti also stands out, because the striker has been getting minutes and confidence despite still adapting to life in Glasgow. These names are slowly forming the backbone of the new Rangers, and supporters can already see who the manager believes can push the club into a new chapter. But where there is progress, there is also uncertainty, and not everyone is emerging stronger in this fresh start. As Roll refines his system and tightens his rotation, a few players are suddenly finding themselves drifting to the edge of the picture. That is where the concern begins, because Rangers have had more than a few painful experiences with big money signings fading away before they ever truly settled. The name Oscar Cortez still stings among the support, not because of the player's intention, but because the whole situation became a symbol of wasted potential. He had all the hype in the world coming out of a strong Youth World Cup, arrived with fanfare, carried a sizable price tag, and yet never managed to build a meaningful rhythm. Injuries interrupted any chance he had of settling, and by the time he was sent on loan to Spain, it already felt like the chapter had been closed before it ever really began. And the fear now is that a similar trajectory might be forming for another summer arrival, Oliver Antman. The funny thing is that his debut could not have gone any better. He landed in Glasgow, barely had time to settle into his flat, and suddenly he was thrown straight into Champions League qualifying. What followed was the kind of performance that instantly grabs attention. He set up 2 goals, looked fearless on the ball, and played with a spark that made everyone believe Rangers had unearthed a genuine gem. Coming from a go-ahead Eagles side where he had built an impressive reputation for creativity, imagination, and assists, it felt as though the club had struck gold. But football moves quickly, and momentum vanishes even faster after that electrifying debut. Antman struggled to keep up the same influence, registering only 1 assist since then and finding it increasingly difficult to carve out minutes under Roll. His situation has become even more complicated. The new formation reduces the number of attacking roles available, and with players like Chamiti, Danilo, JD Gassama, and young Mikey Moore all contributing with goals, Antman has quietly slipped down the pecking order. To make matters more frustrating, his issue is not fitness or injuries. He simply has not fit into Roll's immediate plans, and that can be brutal for a player trying to establish himself in a new league. The danger now is obvious. If he continues to drift without a clear role or consistent minutes, the narrative around him could spiral in the same direction as Cortez. Nobody wants to see another signing arrive with excitement, only to become a forgotten name within months. Rangers have invested heavily in players meant to elevate the attack, and wasting those assets would not only hurt the squad but also limit future flexibility in the market. January is creeping closer, and unless something changes dramatically, a loan for Antman no longer feels unlikely. It feels almost logical. And while all this unfolds in the forward areas, the midfield might face an even bigger storm. There is growing noise around Nicholas Raskin's future, and although Roll sees him as a pillar of his rebuild, outside interest is starting to form at a concerning pace. If a major offer arrives, Rangers may be forced to consider their options, and that is when the name Shea Charles begins to echo around Ibrox. Shea Charles is the kind of name that instantly perks up ears among those who follow the game closely, because anyone who watched him at Southampton over the last year knows exactly what sort of player he is becoming. He carries himself with the confidence of someone far older, someone who already understands the rhythm of senior football, and yet he is only in his early 20s. The talk around him is not built on hype or flashes. It is built on consistency, intelligence with and without the ball, and the kind of maturity that makes coaches trust him almost immediately. Danny Roll knows that better than anyone, given that he worked directly with Charles during his time at Sheffield Wednesday, and that familiarity is why his name is circulating so strongly in Glasgow right now. When a manager already knows how a player thinks, moves, and responds under pressure, the transition becomes far smoother, and that is exactly what makes Charles such an appealing target. And the situation at Southampton adds even more intrigue. His contract runs long, but his place in the squad might shift depending on who takes charge next and how they intend to shape the midfield. A new manager could decide he wants different profiles, different rhythms, different partnerships, and that might push Charles into a place where a move becomes more feasible than expected. It is not that he has done anything wrong, quite the opposite. His form has been one of the few consistent bright spots in a turbulent period for the club. But football is often shaped by circumstance, timing, and fit. If he does not align with the tactical direction chosen in the coming months, an exit could suddenly be on the table, and that is exactly where Rangers hope to sneak in. For a lot of supporters, losing Raskin would feel like a punch to the stomach, because after all the turbulence he went through earlier in the season, he finally looks settled again. Under Roll, he has become one of the players who sets the tone in midfield, someone who brings energy, purpose, and quick movement between the lines. But the market does not care about sentiment, and when interest starts to build from Italy and England, discussions become unavoidable. If a fee that could break records for the club appears, Rangers may have no choice but to analyze it seriously. In an ideal world, Raskin would stay and continue to grow with the new project, but the reality is that the money being whispered around would be impossible to ignore. That is why the club cannot afford to wait until the last minute to think about replacements. And in that regard, Charles does not feel like a step down. He feels like a continuation of the same profile, but with a different flavor. He loves to tackle and intercept, exactly the kind of aggression the midfield often needs, but he also carries the ball forward with confidence, a trait Rangers have lacked at times when trying to break through tight defensive lines. The numbers back it up too. His shot-creating actions are up there with the best midfielders in his division, and his progressive carries show he is always thinking forward, always trying to tilt the pitch in his favor. Add to that his ability to disguise passes into dangerous areas, and it becomes easy to see why Roll would be dreaming about having him in a blue shirt. The comparison between the two players becomes even more interesting when you consider how Roll likes to build his midfield. He wants mobility, intelligence, and players who can shift the tempo at will, and Charles ticks those boxes almost perfectly. He is not afraid to take responsibility, not afraid to demand the ball and dictate the rhythm of play. Even in difficult matches for Southampton, he has stood out as someone who does not hide, someone who tries to control the chaos rather than escape it. That mentality aligns perfectly with what Roll is trying to instill at Rangers, a sense of authority and calmness even when the game becomes frantic. Of course, signing him would not be straightforward. There will be competition and there will be financial challenges. But the fact that he is admired so deeply by Roll is not something to ignore. Managers always have a list of players they trust implicitly. Footballers, they know they can plug into the system without a long adjustment period, and Charles sits right near the top of that list for him. When a coach believes in a player that strongly, the club often works harder to make the deal happen because it is not just about talent, it is about fit, personality, and reliability. What makes the whole scenario even more compelling is the timing. Rangers are in that awkward phase of rebuilding where every decision feels like it will shape the next few years. The squad is being reshaped, the identity is being redefined, and the expectations of the fans are rising again after months de frustration. Bringing in a player like Charles would send a message that the club is building not just for immediate impact, but for long-term stability. He is young enough to grow, strong enough to compete right away, and experienced enough to handle the pressure that comes with the badge. But football stories rarely unfold without complications. The threat of losing Raskin will linger over the next windows, and that could force Rangers to move earlier than planned. If that moment arrives, the club cannot afford to be reactive. They need to have the next step ready, and that step increasingly points to the Northern Irish midfielder. Supporters might not like the idea of replacing one key player with another, but sometimes the evolution of a squad requires harsh decisions, especially when finances and ambitions collide. And if Roll truly believes Charles could take on that role, then the potential transition becomes far less daunting. Or in the meantime, the squad continues to evolve under the new manager, with players fighting for their places and others watching their opportunities fade. The landscape shifts quickly in football, and those who fall behind rarely get the chance to catch up unless something drastic changes. For the likes of Ant-Man, the coming months could determine whether he becomes an important chapter or just a footnote. For the midfield, the looming uncertainty around Raskin and the growing noise around Charles will only intensify as the window approaches, shaping discussions in pubs, living rooms, and terraces across the blue half of Glasgow. Rangers are entering a phase where every move matters, every signing carries weight, and every departure has consequences. The rebuilding project under Roll has only just begun, and already the club finds itself balancing promise with risk, excitement with caution, and ambition with the financial reality of modern football. The next decisions could define the rest of the season and perhaps even the next era at Ibrox, and supporters can feel that tension building with every passing week. But every choice has a ripple effect. Bringing in a midfielder like Charles changes the balance of the squad. It changes who plays, who sits, who stays, and who goes. It changes transfer priorities. It changes how the system evolves over the next few months, and it changes the expectations for what the second half of the season can become. Roll knows that a move like this would shape everything around him, and that is why he is pushing the board to consider it seriously. The upcoming window is shaping up to be one of the most important in recent years, not because Rangers need a massive overhaul, but because they need targeted moves that shift the team in the right direction. A midfielder who can replace Raskin's energy, a forward who can contribute consistently, a clearer plan for players stuck between roles. All of it matters, and all of it is tied to the manager's vision. If the club back him, if they commit to the structure he wants, then the next chapter at Ibrox could finally have the stability and identity supporters have been craving. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to get all the exclusive news about Rangers FC. Don't overlook any details about your beloved team. It's crucial for Rangers FC fans. Whispers swirling through Govan this morning have set the blue half of Glasgow buzzing. Jamie Vardy, the cult hero of English football, is said to have struck an agreement with Rangers, sending supporters into a frenzy and sparking no shortage of heated debate across the country. Though nothing has been confirmed by Ibrox officials, the rumour has gathered a life of its own, carried by late-night chats, pub talk, and a steady stream of social media speculation that shows no sign of slowing. According to those close to the supposed negotiations, Vardy has been wooed by the idea of leading what some inside the club are calling a super attack, a forward line designed to restore fear in opposition defences and rekindle a spark many fans feel has flickered in recent times. The very phrase has become a rallying cry for some supporters and a punchline for others, depending on which side of the debate they fall. For every Rangers fan delighted at the prospect of a proven Premier League marksman donning the royal blue, there's another questioning whether the move is simply too bold, too nostalgic, or too risky. On social media, the reaction has been electric. Some are already editing mock-ups of Vardy celebrating in front of the Copland Road stand, convinced the signing represents a statement of intent for the coming campaign. Others are less convinced, pointing to questions over his age, his physical demands, and how he might settle into a side still shaping its identity. The chatter has become so loud that even rival supporters have joined in, mocking or marvelling, depending on their allegiance. Inside Rangers circles, the belief, real or imagined, is that Vardy's arrival could shift the dynamics of Scottish football. His energy, attitude, and relentless style have long been admired, and many within the fan base believe those traits align perfectly with the grit and fire expected at Ibrox. Whether this bold vision becomes reality or fades as yet another summer rumour remains to be seen. But for now, the blue side of Glasgow is alive with anticipation. And until someone steps forward to quash or confirm it, the murmur will only grow louder. Greetings, fans. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, as it's greatly appreciated. by Rangers FC. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments section below. Until the next video, stay tuned